Welcome to our podcast. Welcome to this series for the City Quantum and AI Summit. I'm Paolo Cuomo, co-founder of Quantum London. I'm delighted today to be speaking to Julie Holt-Jones on the subject of space. So with no further ado, Julie, let's dive in. Please share us your background and how you got into this fascinating topic.
Thank you, Paolo. Welcome. It's a great pleasure to be with you today. Yes, well, I had the most amazing start to my career. I was the first female graduate entrant to the European Space Agency, working in the spacecraft operations department. And that gave me a tremendous start to my career. And I was able to dip my toe into all aspects of space, whether it's from the ground, launch and early orbit, data dissemination, all aspects. And you know what 21-year-old gets the opportunity. My very first project was a joint venture with European Space Agency and NASA, and I worked on the flight dynamics and mathematics to actually orientate that spacecraft so it could be retrieved by the robotic arm from the shuttle. So an amazing start to my career. I then went on to work in the private sector. I directed operations out in the Far East. I've lived and worked in the Far East, the Middle East, India. And over those years and those experiences have enabled me to become a trusted counsel to governments internationally and the private industry.
Fantastic. And so would you sort of define yourself as a techie or just someone who has sort of had to work with maths and science and technology?
I wouldn't define myself as a techie. I think I've got a very deep, I obviously have a physics background, a very deep understanding of all the underlying technology and their applications. I think I've moved on and used all of that to be able to give strategic advice and opportunities. So, and be able to communicate that knowledge across a wide spectrum.
Fantastic. And that communication point, as you say, is such an important one. So I guess that led you into then Space4Sight as an organization. Tell us a little bit about exactly what it is and sort of what triggered you to set it up.
Of course. And so, as I mentioned, I had my own consultancy for a number of years and living all around the world. One thing that struck me, that particularly in other countries and domains, dual use has been used for many, many years, the defence and civil. And I felt that the opportunity, there was a growing awareness that dual use can offer us so much, whether it's stretching those pounds or just in the capability. And so I invited Air Marshal Andrew Turner to join me, who was very much a senior in the Air Force and was very close to the formation of the US Space Command and oversaw the formation of the UK Space Command. And together we've been able to provide Space4Sight will offer bespoke advice across the civil, commercial and defence domains. That's a unique offering. And what makes us different is that we are basing our advice on deep, practical operational experience. We've been there, we've done it. Our 27 partner associates are all experts in their fields as well. So we're not a generalist consultancy. We specialise in space and those supporting technologies based on real experience.
That makes sense. Now, just to be clear on dual use, is this the use of the same rocket to launch both military and commercial satellites, or is this about satellites in space that can be used for both?
So when I'm talking about dual use, I'm talking, of course, a rocket can launch many different satellites on the same launch. But when I'm talking about dual use, I'm talking specifically about the same spacecraft being used for both civil and defence purposes. So, for example, a satellite that observes the Earth could be informing a farmer when to sow his seeds, looking at the condition of the Earth. That same satellite can give us information on troop movements or migration. So you can use exactly the same satellite, but for other purposes, and that stretches to other things like, for example, secure communication. In fact, I'll just give a funny little anecdote. One of the communication satellites I worked on once was used for the secure communications for enabling drivers of Formula One to talk securely to each other, which is a lovely, I think is a nice just suddenly thought of that, a nice way to describe how we can be using those things in a dual use fashion.
Not just a good example like that, but also I think a fascinating way of making people realize that it's not just what they might be thinking about. Who would ever have guessed that a satellite is relevant in Formula One racing? So,
Exactly.
so
It touches us all in every way.
well, so then building on that, you're obviously joining the City Quantum and AI Summit. So talk to us about what is the relevance of that in the context of what you do.
Well, it's very exciting to be joining next month. For me, I'm very passionate about opening up the eyes to maybe audiences that are not so familiar with space. For business, there's tremendous opportunities. And so having that non-space audience, I think is very, very exciting. With AI and quantum particularly, of course, as a consultancy and throughout my career, it's been very important to horizon scan technologies and look at how they might affect space and spacecraft operations. When we join AI and quantum together, that's when I think we're going to see the real difference in relation to space. I'm sure in other sectors as well, but certainly with space, because AI, we already use AI. We've got a tremendous amount of data that's processed in the space domain. And of course, AI helps us to do that. But when we can bring AI and quantum together, we'll bring up some amazing opportunities. For example, if I use a defense opportunity, quantum sensors, which can scan the skies and the seas, looking at multiple threats, and then being able to sift that information using AI. In the civil sector, making our space safer, because there's a lot of debris in space, and being able to actually analyze where that debris is and move satellites in a safe way is really, really important. And then just one more we mustn't forget, I'm afraid, is the security aspect, because there's a flip side here, cybersecurity. Obviously, there was great opportunity for quantum to help with our encryption and make things much more safe. But of course, there's always malign actors, people who don't want to do the right thing, and they'll be trying to hack and use quantum in a negative way. So we need to be aware of both the flip sides and just be prepared for that eventuality.
Excellent. That makes sense. And of course, all those topics are going to be well discussed at the summit. I'm particularly interested in the debris point, and I think that's a longer discussion for another day. But the point that we need to understand where everything is in space, because even the smallest piece of space debris can cause damage, I think is an important one. You'd agree? Yes.
Absolutely. Even the size of a fleck of paint, because it's moving at such speeds, can cause him huge amount of damage. And sometimes these things happen by accident, sometimes they're done on purpose. As you mentioned, it's a huge topic which I think we could have a whole podcast whole about.
Exactly. Well, let's plan that. I mean, I think you've obviously talked about dual use. You've mentioned a farmer on the one hand, the Grand Prix on the other. If we're sitting there in the centre of the city at the summit, then there's an awful lot of banks and insurance companies and asset managers and lawyers. They, on the whole, will not be thinking about this as a topic. What is it that you've seen you sort of raised in the past that has got their interest and made them realise this is relevant to all large companies?
Well, I think the sort of standout fact is for finance, timing and time stamping is a fundamental underlying issue, is absolutely crucial to the operations in finance. That relies on what we call a position, navigation and timing satellite. Now, if access to space is disrupted, or for any reason, maybe hostile, be it from natural hazards. So let's split it and say threats, which will be malign actors, and then hazards will be natural things, for example, space debris or solar flares or so forth. So if that was interrupted, I believe the sort of London School of Economics has estimated that the damage to the UK economy would be in the order of £1 billion per day per outage. So that's a significant number. I feel is a huge amount of risk. The things that could be done to mitigate it. Not all people are actually aware of that issue, but it needs to be brought out onto the table for discussion.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense, and I'm glad, frankly, that we're talking about it both now and that we will be touching on it at the summit. So,
Mm.
yeah, where is space going to go, so to speak? Yeah, if you talk to the average person on the street, probably they're reflecting on, whether Elon Musk is going to get us all to Mars in the next 10 years or so. But in a sort of more pragmatic sense, where do you see the next 5, 10, 15 years in the space domain?
Paolo, I don't think we can be prescriptive about it because we can only be limited by our imagination. It's over 30 years in the industry, and I think this is the most exciting time of my career to be in the industry. There's so much, all the supporting technology is now becoming to fruition. So ideas that maybe have been around for quite a long time are now becoming possible. For example, manufacturing in space, microgravity commercialization. There's so many things, space-based solar power. If we build a structure in space that can harness the power of the sun, it could solve all Earth's energy problems. And these things, along with launch costs coming down, make these things possible. And these are not pipe dreams or sci-fi movies. These are things that could actually be happening. And then if we look beyond that, the lunar economy, for example, we haven't fully mapped the moon. We don't know the resources that might be on there. We're looking at making fuel from water on the moon, nuclear fission, experimentation that be possible on the moon is very exciting. So it's really is where our imaginations might go. Asteroid mining, for example, these aren't dreams anymore. These are things could possibly be happening.
Fantastic. Well, truly exciting opportunity then. And I guess maybe the question to close is, from your point of view, let's look at this through a UK lens. What are the opportunities for the UK? Where is it positioned compared to other countries? What is the scale of the impact on UK GDP?
It's a very interesting point, actually, and Space4Sight, we've just recently submitted a white paper to government. We feel there's a great opportunity inside this Parliament term. When you look at there are reports, various ones, but we're looking at in the order of the industry being worth $1.8 trillion by 2030. The opportunity is there. We could see an uplift of, say, 2% in UK GDP through jobs, tax, revenue, IP, reputation. An interesting factor maybe the audience doesn't realise is that we are still have great connections with the European Space Agency. That's not been affected by Brexit. We still have very great ties, which we should utilise. The majority of our national space budget goes to ESA, and we get contracts in return. Now, obviously, it can always be better. We could get better returns. We could be involved in more programs for security. But I think it's important to realise that we do still have a European connection. We're not being isolated by Brexit. There's some subtleties there, which I won't go into now, but there is, and it doesn't harm our obviously very close to US relationship as well. But there's many things we can do. For example, harnessing that dual use, bringing the defence and the civil sector together, because there's so many commonalities, will help stretch those pounds. Partnering with maybe emerging countries, that's a very, very important sector. And with my very international background, that's something I'm very passionate about, harnessing those very close ties that the UK has. So there's so many things that we can do to enhance, but we must choose things that the UK is a leader of, rather than trying to spread things very thinly. We can punch above our weight. We have a huge space heritage in this country and entrepreneurship, and there's so many skills, but it does take a bold move. And I think, we have had a space strategy. It was a great start, but the industry is moving so quickly and technology is moving so quickly that really needs a refresh now, and to grasp all those opportunities going forward.
Fantastic, that makes sense. And those themes of leadership, entrepreneurialism, innovation, and in fact, the this year's Lord Mayor's mantra of connect to prosper links to your point about other countries. So, look, Julie, fantastic. Thank you for your thought. Thank you for your insight. We look forward to what you'll have to say at the summit as well, and keeping in touch on this incredibly important topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.